Yeah. Hello everyone. We will be starting the session soon. You can share the Meet link and YouTube link with your classmates and friends so that they can join before the limit. Okay.
राज एक बार म्यूट करना। जो लोग हो यहाँ पर वो लोग एक बार सबको बोल दो, जो लोग नहीं जानते इसके बारे में। अपने जो लोग ज्वाइन करना चाहते हैं उनको बोल दो, हम लोग 5 मिनट में स्टार्ट करेंगे।
Yeah. Hello everyone. Are you excited for the session? Because I am. Yeah, Raj, you can stop the loop and start the presentation. Yeah. 1 minute. Yeah. I'm audible, Raj, right?
Yeah, audible.
Uh, yeah, sure. Hello everyone and good evening. We are meeting after the orientation, right? Finally, for the session after the orientation. Okay, during the orientation, after a brief idea about each field, what we do and how, we have brought to you the Explorer Month. We are dedicating this month, we have named it Explorer Month, for all of you to explore each interesting field more closely and gradually find your interest in your journey. Yep, that's right. That sounds cool, right? Okay, so this is the very first Explorer session, which is on web development and is for every web uh, enthusiast, anyone wanting to explore web and more technologies, right? Taking some hints from the web introduction during the orientation, which was given by my friends Siddharth and Avash, we will explore more about it, different technologies, their functionalities, and many more, right? If you have any questions during the event or doubts, feel free to just raise your hand or ask or type in the chat. There is really no problem. You are free to do that and stay with us till the end to know where and how to get started and or how to continue your journey. Okay, it's time then. Without further ado, let's start Explore One web development. Right, web development or developing the web or developing in the web, whatever you say. It refers to the tasks associated with creating, building, and maintaining the websites and web applications. It may, however, include web design, web programming, and database management. Who isn't familiar with these three things like website servers and browsers? All are familiar with that. We all know about these three things as we use it every day, every hour, and that's what web is composed of. It looks simple if I talk in this way, right? But uh, the main thing is, the main task of web development is building this, making it better, and making it more accessible to everyone. There isn't a day when we don't open a browser and imagine just imagine how great it would feel like to search a website which you made and keep viewing it every minute because yeah, I wrote the code for that everything. It feels really awesome. Let's move to the kitchen and see what's cooking. This is a famous example which you'd remember often to make you understand the parts of web development. This is the kitchen example, as it's called. You will get to it every time in your journey. Imagine that you are a client or a customer waiting for the food to be served in the restaurant. Okay, just imagine yourself to be that client waiting for the food. Now you got your food served right on your table. Now how the food looks, how the food smells, how it tastes, it delicious or bad, and or anything, any attribute related to the food or the dish is compared to the front end of the web. Yes, that's the front end of the web. The waiters who brought you this, the waiters who brought you this to your table work as routes in a website, which helps to fetch something from the kitchen or the backend. Yeah, the waiters work as routes which bring the food from backend to the client. The cooks and the chefs are preparing the food. They are compared to the backend part. It all depends upon the chefs and the cook how the delicious, how that food will be delicious, or how it, how it smell, how the shape, how the design will be, how that, how it will taste. So that's the backend part. They do every task related to the what you will like in the front end. Yeah. Seeing this slide, I think something is missing there, right? Something is missing there. Can you guess what it is? What is missing in this? Anyone? Let me give a hint. It is a raw food. The food must be coming from somewhere, right? To for the cooks and chefs to make it, to prepare a dish. So where the raw food is coming from? It's from farm or storage, or something, a storage house, or go down, something like that. Yeah, it is the database which stores the raw food, or I should say your data in your web. The comparison is perfect, right? The from client to the how the food tastes, as to be compared to front end, back end as the cooks and chefs, and database as the raw food storage. Okay, let's move to some more practical examples, and a specific one. Basically, web development is divided into three important parts: the front end, the back end, and the database. If we see, to understand it better, let's see a simple website. For to be more specific, yeah, there's the website. Every bit what is visible in the website, what is visible in the screen, every bit is for the front end, is part of the front end. The animations, the effect, the stars behind which are hovering, if you scroll, as Raj is scrolling, the effects, the text, the fonts, everything here is related to front end. Everything is visible, everything which is visible right now. Now you can see a login button in the top right corner, right? Just think once, we can't authenticate the user just by doing something in the style, or just editing the animation. That's not logical. That's logical, right? We can't do that, but just by changing the style. I can't authenticate Piyush. I can't authenticate Raj just by making some style in the HTML or CSS. Okay, we'll talk with that later. So here comes the first implementation of backend. We create the server to authenticate users and get related data. So authentication is one of the first functionality of the server which we create. Now this data which you give, the user's name, ID, email, password, and profile, and everything, is then stored in the database. So that's all the three parts of web development: front end, back end, and database in their simplest form. That's it. Back to the presentation. There is my friend Siddharth, whom you made during the orientation, during the introduction of web, who is really good in front end. He will take you further in the journey. Here I call upon Siddharth.
Thank you, Saurabh, for the compliment.
Yeah, hello, Siddharth.
So let's start off with front end, which is my niche, which was correctly quoted by Saurabh. Let me give an technical definition to it. Front end is a combination of two different elements: the graphic design, the look, and the user interface, the feel. It is a front-end developer's responsibility to ensure that the website which the visitors access can easily interact with that. Front-end web developer develops the graphical user interface of a website. All web developers start their journey working in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript because there must be something on a web page to be seen by the client. Isn't so? So these are the three pillars of web development. The front-end developers make a website so easy that the client or the visitors which come to your web page can easily access and understand what is on the web page. Hypertext markup language, or HTML, is the backbone of any website, without which the web page cannot exist. You can call it the skeleton. It is the HTML code which provides the overall framework on how the website will look. Cascading style sheets, or CSS, controls the presentation aspect of this site. It allows you to have its own unique look. It does this by manipulating the style sheets that sits on the top of HTML. Now, these are mere definitions and boring as well. So let me show you the actual power by an example. Raj, show them the example. You can feel free, come up with wild guesses and tell me what website this is. First, I want some wild guesses from the audience.
Google Meet.
Close. Exact.
Many have guessed in the chat.
Oh, that's great to see.
One of them has
Zoom.
written something about HTML. Yes, many of you are correct. Most of you are correct. This is Google Classroom. Now, someone can tell me what is missing here?
Design.
Icons.
Yes, the icons are missing. But exactly what part is missing from this website?
Styling.
Yes, the styling.
Absolutely.
No, the meet link is still there. Meet links are a part of the HTML. No, framework. We are not till yet there. JavaScript. Yes, JavaScript is missing from this site as well. So from this site, the CSS and JavaScript is missing. And now to get a better look for the differences, Raj, show them the actual site. Can clearly see the power of CSS. CSS is the paint to your brush. And without paint, only lines are there on a painting. Moving on to JavaScript, which was also missing from that site. JavaScript is an event-based imperative programming language that uses DOM or document object model to transform static HTML page into dynamic sites. So for an example, you have a button, you want to add animations to it, or you want to build a slideshow or some more animations kind of stuff. You need JavaScript. It brings logic to the website. It is the brain of the website. Now the question arises that we can build HTML, CSS, we can build website from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. A full-fledged website, you all must be knowing. So why do we need libraries and frameworks? Raj, move on to the next slide. It is true that we can build a whole full-fledged front-end website from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But libraries and frameworks take this to a step further. It makes easier to build website and applications using libraries and frameworks. First, libraries. Libraries contains various functions and methods or objects as well to perform practical tasks on a web page. For example, take an actual book library. You visit there every day to read your favorite books. You may be an author. You get there to read other author books to get new perspective or ideas, or utilize them to write your own book, to steal some of the other ideas from subplots from other authors' books. The same goes for the libraries as well. Libraries has codes and functions that developers can reuse and repurpose. A developer writes these codes, and other developers reuse the same codes to perform certain tasks, like preparing slideshows or creating image effects or tweaking the fonts. It saves them significant time and efforts. Now, what are frameworks? Frameworks are application frameworks that allows developers to manipulate code to meet their unique requirement. Suppose web application is analogous to building a house. You have the option to create everything from scratch with the materials, like you have the cement, the paint, which are the HTML and CSS of a house. But it will consume time if you build them from scratch, and it will take you huge cost as well. But if you have ready-made goods such as bricks, paint, wallpapers, and assemble them to the architect, and you tell him or her to build them using a framework, then the construction becomes faster, saving you time and money as well. The same goes with application development. Instead of writing every code from scratch, you can use pre-written codes as building blocks based on application architect. Frameworks adapt to the website design more quickly and makes it easier to work. Now, here are some popular front-end libraries and frameworks. You can take a screenshot of these and use them in your further projects. From these, I use React and Bootstrap the most. Bootstrap for CSS cascading. Yes, Raj, React supremacy. You would be familiar with React if you go ahead with web development. So if anyone has any doubt related to frameworks or front-end development or any of those which we have covered till yet, you can go ahead. You can unmute or write in the chat. I'm open to questions.
Siddharth, I think one of the common questions is people which start just have ended JavaScript, learning JavaScript, and want to start some frameworks. They really confuse which framework to start, right? They so can you recommend them something?
For frameworks, I would tell them that they can use Angular, but nowadays Bootstrap, React has been used more likely. But for me, if they ask just after HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I would tell them to explore more and more so that they can know the pros and cons of every framework, and they can choose their own which suits them. So
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one question from the audience, and
Yes.
Nitin asks that instead of JavaScript, some also prefer to use Python. Is it so?
Yes. Many prefer Python. Django is a very good example of that. Python can also be used, but Python is used framing it with the ML stuffs. And I don't use Python, so Raj can tell more about that. Sorry, Piyush uses Python. So can you unmute and tell them the pros of Python?
Yeah, sure, Siddharth. So when I started my web development journey, I started backend coding in Python. So the frameworks that are mostly used in Python are the Flask and the Django frameworks. So we'll get to know more about those as we proceed further in this presentation. So
Yes.
it's not a limitation that only JavaScript is used. Other than that, many other languages are also used for the backend side of the web development.
Yes, there is Java as well, JavaScript,
Yeah.
Python.
Nitin asking like in front end instead of JavaScript or Python. In front end, actually, there are only three things: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually,
you can move to Python in backend, as Piyush said. We will do that in the further slides.
Okay, if you are going for any other language for backend, it is okay. But for JavaScript, for front end, JavaScript is the language, because the browser should also understand your language. And till date, there is no such DOM created for other languages to be read for the other than JavaScript.
Yeah, actually, if you see the history of JavaScript, JavaScript was created to run in browsers, especially.
Yes.
So
And front end is the part which is run on the browser. So JavaScript is it.
Okay, so we have a second question from Aman Kumar Gupta. He's asking if we can call frameworks as apps also.
No. You are confusing the whole thing. Frameworks are. I gave an example. Suppose for any other example, you are building a furniture. The outer block or the square part is the framework, and the inside blocks which you are decorating and creating, that is your code. So framework creates and gives extra what to say. It gives a skeleton or a skin to the front end part. Different frameworks have different niche, or I can say that different purposes, pros, but framework it is not an app.
Okay, so to conclude, Siddharth wants to say that frameworks are, you can say frameworks are just libraries of
Yes.
reused codes. So you can reuse them in your apps as well. So these are not actually apps, but these are pieces of code, you can say, that you can reuse on your apps.
Yes. How to apply frameworks and libraries to
Okay,
website?
we have one more question. So how to apply framework and library to website?
You are going way faster than I have expected. Applying frameworks and libraries to your website has a what to say. You will go with tutorials, I guess. We will provide you that. Has a step-by-step procedure. Every framework and library has a step-by-step procedure to be applied in the HTML code. But for instance, Aryan, can you show Raj? Can you show them the inspect? But you can all inspect now. This website.
I guess we will be, don't worry, we will be covering the frameworks and libraries in future sessions. So just stay tuned with us and we'll be moving on, I guess.
For now, as you'll see in the further slides and further in this presentation, we'll introduce you to some of the more popular and common frameworks and libraries. On the topic that how to apply those, that's completely up to you. So now you'll get to the introduction for these frameworks and libraries. These libraries and frameworks have great documentation and great tutorials. So whatever you decide to use it, you'll have to go by the tutorials and discover on your own.
And don't worry, we'll be exploring these libraries and frameworks in future sessions. So, and stay tuned.
Yes, we will be having sessions about frameworks, different frameworks and libraries, and we will help you to get them applied to your website and get them through it. Okay. Now we can move further. Avash will take over to you.
So thank you, Siddharth, and good evening, everyone. So let's talk about the backend. So as Siddharth told, front end is the part which deals with the looks and feel of a website. But what makes the front end of a website even possible? Where is all the data stored? This is where the backend comes in. The backend of a website is a combination of servers, applications, and databases. A backend developer builds and maintains the technology that powers those components, which together enable the user-facing side of a website to even exist in the first place. So if we take a few examples, so like in the mom's website, when they update the fees even before updating the result, that is done through backend. Also, if you remember the example that I gave in the orientation, the difference between a good backend, that is the CBSE website, and the Netflix. You can see that during the result, why the CBSE website crashes, whereas the Netflix application, it never crashes, even though there are millions of users, and this is due to a good backend developer or good backend code. So, if you like writing complex and efficient code and have a knack of problem solving, then this is a field that you should definitely give it a try. To become a good backend developer, you need a few of the skills. First of all, you need to have a good grasp over any backend programming language. Now, there are many languages: JavaScript, Python, Golang, etc. You can pick any one that you like. You have to be good in managing databases, whether it is SQL or NoSQL. and then you have to write good API endpoints, which you will learn eventually through practice. Uh, Next slide. So now there are a lot of tools in the market that you can use to build backend application. If you want to use JavaScript for both backend and frontend, then you can use Express or Fastify in Node.js. If you are good at Python, then you can work with Flask or Django. And if you really hate yourself, then be sure to check out PHP. There are tons of options that you can choose from depending upon the use case. If I have to give my opinion about or my journey, then I really like to use Express. It is really simple, and I've been looking forward to work with Fastify. So now let's move on to the next part. So what are the requirements that I need? What are the requirements to start up my journey as a web developer? So for working on the front end, all you need is a web browser and a code editor. There are tons of options available in the market. You can try out different options and pick the one that suits you the best. So if you want a really minimalistic or lightweight editor, then I think you should go with Sublime. If you want a lot of extension that help you during coding, then I think VS Code is a perfect pick for you. Now, for the backend, different tools or different languages require different setup. Like for example, if you want to work with JavaScript framework, you need to install Node.js and npm. If you want to use Python, you need to use pip or to install Python frameworks and so on. So the setup for each of the backend or each of the language is a little different. So, but don't worry, if you ever face any problem while setting up your development environment, you can always ask your doubts on the PSoC Discord server. We have a thriving community of web developers who are always ready to help you. So now let's move on to the next part,
Okay,
which is
so before moving on, I have a question for you all. What favorite code editor are you all using? You can type it in your chat, or you can just send me to speak. For me, it is VS Code.
VS Code.
Yeah, VS Code supremacy.
VS Code supremacy. Nice,
not
nice.
not a single one using JetBrains.
I'm happy they are not writing Notepad.
Oof.
Anyone of you have ever tried Beam? Okay, so there is one who has used NeoBeam, Abhirup Panda.
Have you actually used Vim? There are many yeses in the chat box.
Nice to see.
हमको ही पढ़ाते ना.
Okay, Raj, you can also clear that doubt related to MERN. Someone asked that, right?
Yeah. So see, there's MERN and there's full stack. Full stack covers for full stack you have to have the knowledge of various frameworks and other databases and various backend frameworks. MERN stack is just a subset of full stack, where you have where you have the knowledge of at least one framework from each field. Like you see, MERN stands for Mongo, Express, React, and Node. Mongo is your database. Express and Node is your backend. Okay, and React is one of your front-end frameworks. So you can say MERN is exactly a subset of full stack development. Full stack development. So I hope I was able to clear it down.
Okay, so before we move any further, do you have any doubt in the server side part?
We can move on, I guess.
Okay, so the next topic is, I think, really important, is that how do I choose a new tech stack? So every day a new JavaScript framework or library is born. This leads to a ton of tech stacks for developers to choose from. While it is good to have more options and more competition in the market, which is good, this often leads to a decision fatigue. Developers are often confused about which tech stack to choose, whether should I go for React or Vue or Angular, or which backend framework or language should I use. So, and I think sooner or later you will also face this same problem. So to avoid such confusion, You can ask yourself a few questions before you choose your next framework or library. What problem am I trying to solve with this tool? So if it is a really simple project, I don't need to go with like a production grade server like Spring Boot or Maven, which is really complicated. So is there any other tool that achieves the same result but is simpler? Second, now you have to ask like how steep is the learning curve? So how much hours do I need to invest in this invest so that I can learn this? Or how quickly do I need to master this tool? Do I need to make a project in a month, or can I invest like 6 months to learn this tool? Have I covered all the prerequisites for working with the library or framework? Maybe this library is in Python. So do I know it, or do I have to learn it? So these are the questions that you have to ask yourself before you start something new. Otherwise, you will just go around swapping frameworks and libraries and you will learn nothing. And also remember that any tool is neither the best nor the worst. It all depends on your use case. Every tool has its own functionality. So do your due research. And again, if you are ever confused or need any guidance regarding which tech stack do I use or how do I start learning it, then you can just ping us at our Discord server. We are more than happy to help you guide it. So now let's look at the Raj next slide. So the web dev roadmap. So we have talked about the front end and the back end, which also includes the database. And as you can see that it's a vast field. So from HTML, CSS, JavaScript to writing the backend, there are so many different options. So how do I start? So here I think we are sharing our journey about how we started and where are we now, so that you can get an idea that how you should start your journey as well. So for me, I think I started in the first year itself. I started with the front end. So I learned HTML, CSS. I did not know JavaScript at all, and it took me like a month to, I think, get a grasp at it. And after that, okay, so if any one of you has ever worked with DOM, you know how tiring it is to work on the front end. Like you have to write document.query selector 100 times. And this is why I chose the React framework. It is simple. It has the learning curve is really slow, and you can learn it at your own pace. So once I did that, I went to backend. I did not want to learn Python or any other language, so I started with Node, which is in JavaScript, and currently I'm learning Next. So now I would like Piyush to he actually codes in Python. So I also want him to share his journey so that if anyone wants to code in Python, they can have an idea. Piyush.
Yeah. So as Avash mentioned, so almost everyone starts their web development journey from HTML and CSS. But before, same as in before learning JavaScript, I actually started learning Python as it fascinated me very much. So then I discovered that you can build backend for web apps in Python. So I immediately started learning Python backend frameworks. So that's mainly Flask. I learned Flask at that time and did some minor projects in it. So after becoming somewhat proficient in it, I resumed JavaScript and Express, and I'm still learning it. So one of the other Python framework that I'm learning currently is Django. So, and for the front end side, I prefer React over Vanilla JS. By the way, fun fact, did you know that the CSE website that Raj just showed some slides ago, that's the backend is built in Python using the Flask framework. So you can discover, and there's no limit to discovering. You can discover and learn any backend framework in any language as per your choice.
I just want to share a story, Piyush. That when I started the journey, it was like of course, everyone starts with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I really got lost and spent more than 2 months in just HTML and CSS. From I was learning from Pre-Code Camp at that point of time, and more than 2 months of time was just given in HTML and CSS. And I thought at that time that web development is all about HTML, CSS. So what I want to convey is that at that point of time, I didn't have the idea of the whole roadmap, like what I have to do next after learning this. So we will be sharing this roadmap, a simple roadmap which you prepared for all of you, with the recommended resources to continue your learning. Like I then stopped learning from free code camp site and started some recommended site named Screamba, which was great for me, and I learned React from there. So, talking about JavaScript, there is another fun story that I gave HTML, as I told, I gave more than 2 months HTML CSS, but in JavaScript, I read the whole handbook for JavaScript in less than a week and just started React because I wanted to start at React. So, there isn't any problem in starting a new language like JavaScript, because if you know language before, so you can freely start any framework, JS framework, React, Angular, or Vue, and make some front-end projects so that you can learn more about it, right?
Or if you're someone lazy like me, you can just go with one language, JavaScript.
Yeah, that's the part where backend comes. In backend, you have the option for choosing another language. Like you may go with JavaScript, Python, or PHP. So some people may prefer Python because they want to learn Python and continue the journey in Python. But like we stick to JavaScript because we didn't know Python at that time and didn't want to learn a new language. So we just continued our web dev journey with JavaScript by learning Node.js and then a backend framework, Express. And like Pius told, he continued his journey in Python by learning Flask and Django. Yeah, talking about backend, there is one more important thing, but that is serverless. Yeah, serverless is really an important tool, like Firebase and Apache Cassandra. It is really easy to learn and use, and you can use it in any competition hackathon. It is really helpful in such short hackathons or short contests. Any experience related to that, Raj?
Of course, I had to learn a full JavaScript library. I remember the passport.js. We had to do it within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an experience for me.
Yeah, I got a recommendation last year. I was also in the same dilemma that should I learn uh, Node.js and Express, or should I use this serverless like Firebase because it is easy. So one of the senior recommended me that yeah, you learn Firebase, you can do whatever it has all the functions, authentication, storage, and everything you can do there. It is easy, but at some point of time learn Node.js and Express because that's where you will know how the HTTP request is sent, how it is what is the get request, what is post request, how it is sent, how the headers are sent, how the body is sent, everything. So at a point of time, you will have to learn Node.js and Express.
Or you can just go with Flask or Django if you like Python.
Yeah, if you love in Python.
The thing is that with JS, you can start from as you will be learning JS during the part where you will be experimenting with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You will be learning JS, and you can continue that with learning React. It is also in JS. In backend, Node.js and Express are there. In database, MongoDB has a great integration with Node.js. So JS has that advantage. But if you want, you can go with Python or Java or anything. And to give you a glimpse, the journey of roadmap doesn't end here. Web development has a network of roads up after this, such as DevOps, cloud, or integration with ML. The ads which you see in Google, those are all done by web developers. So we will be sharing those as well in our future sessions. So stay connected with us.
Excuse me, Bhaiya.
Yes.
Is it necessary to learn HTML and CSS deeply because we already have frameworks, right?
See, you have frameworks. You have frameworks for HTML, CSS, everything. But if you don't know about the functionalities which HTML and Java CSS provide, you won't be knowing what the frameworks actually provides you, what all benefits the frameworks provide you. Or else, if you can't provide a personal touch to those websites which you create, the framework will give you a how to look, like Bootstrap has many libraries through which you can just import the CSS styling for the nav bars or slideshows, anything, but you can't give a personal or unique touch to that. So it is important that you experiment and learn as deep as you can with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Yeah, Shraddha is absolutely correct. Yeah, it is important to learn, but while exploring, you can really know just the basic functionalities and basic attributes in HTML and CSS and go with the further in the roadmap. But at a point of time when if you want to be a front-end developer, then you have to study in deep about different another advanced functions and advanced attributes of HTML and CSS, because there are many person who has a profession as front-end developer only. Imagine how
Yes.
must they have been.
Yes, you must be knowing, if you want to be a web developer, as a full-time web developer, you must be knowing the functionalities which HTML, CSS, and JavaScript provide.
Okay, Vijay. Thanks.
Okay, so the conclusion is that HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is just just the beginning. So it gives you a road for ahead to for you to learn. Okay,
However,
so
you can go further if they don't have any questions.
okay, just a second. If you have any questions, you can just unmute and ask them, or you can just type it in the chat. We are open.
Bhaiya, what about the security for the website? What we have to learn for that?
Security for the website is covered in the backend part. So okay, we'll be exploring that as well.
What security means, let me just explain the security part. For security part, you don't, mostly web developers don't do anything kind of thing. They just implement some of the packages. If you have heard of packages, so you will only writing one line of code. Means, for example, there is a package called XSS, XSS package, which prevents XSS attacks. So this is just a small line you have to write in a backend portion. But as a web developer, for now, as a beginner, you don't have to worry about the securities for now. But in future, you have to learn about it. So I guess you are clear with that. So we can move on.
Okay, so Aman has asked a question. So we have to create a server or a buy a server from third party, like to create our website link using Cloudflare. Okay, so you don't create your server, you write the code for your server and then you host it. So essentially you are paying for hosting, but the code that you write, that is yours. So you don't buy a server, you buy the place to host your server. And the CSC website, yes, it is, I think they used MongoDB and they hosted it on Heroku, right, Raj?
Yeah, actually, we are not
Yeah.
storing any data on the server. All the data is stored in the database, like MongoDB and all. So I hope I was able to clear it out.
Like if you want a simple example, server is something that takes the data from the database and gives it to front end to show the user. It acts like an intermediate between the user and the database.
Okay, so
Yeah, so I guess we'll move on.
okay.
Okay, so what's next? As you all must have known about the terms related to web dev, I have a small task for you all. Refer to any of the resources you can find, or we are going to provide you resources on the Discord server. And if you haven't joined our Discord server, please do it at the earliest and start making your own website, because you will be able to say that, oh, ye maine banaya hai, dekho maine host kiya hai. I want to tell you that it is very it gives you immense happiness when you say this, that please watch my website, I have hosted it, try it. And for ideas, that you can pick up any idea, like a clone or anything from your mind. But one one thing I want to say you that please don't be stuck in seeing the tutorials only. Go out on the playground, practice, and get your hands dirty. And if you don't have any idea, we have a website for you, Raj. Next slide.
Yeah, sure.
And this one. This is a very good quote to complement my words. You can never become a good developer by just watching the tutorials. It is a very good quote. And Raj, next. Next one. Frontendmentor.io. It has many of the projects which you can start off with. And once you have started making some projects, post them in our Discord server and let us see your progress as well. For any guidance, you are welcome to our web dev channel of our server. And thank you. It's a wrap from our end. Thank you for your patience hearing. Hope we were some sense to you and you were able to learn something. And you can join us in our social media sites as well. We are present at Twitter and Instagram as well. So if you have any doubts, unmute or write in the chat. We are all open. Okay.
Also, for those of you who are joining the Discord server, I highly recommend you to introduce yourself in the introduction channel so we get to know more about you.
Yes. Okay, Roshan is writing that I am starting web development from scratch. So I guess you were telling us that you were starting with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You meant that?
Yeah, that's totally fine. I also started web development from scratch as well.
Just one more tip: if you're starting web development, just start with making some projects. Don't watch tutorials all the time. So making projects will be a lot of help to you. You will get to learn more in less time.
For me, watching 10 tutorials and one project is same.
For now, you don't. One more question is there, sir. For hosting, you need subscription for any browser. No, browser means I'm getting a question. So no, for now you don't need any payment. You can host your website absolutely free, and also a web server absolutely free. In any means, for example, if you want to host a backend server, you can use Heroku, and if you want to host your front end part, you can use Netlify, Firebase, or GitHub Pages also. So I guess this solves your doubt.
Yes, our college.
For those of you who are wondering how to get started, I have shared the link. You can just visit this link and practice all the development skills. It has all levels of project from beginner to advanced. So you can just start with some beginner projects after learning about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Yes. And to add on to Shashwat's advice, our college is giving 1 year of GitHub Pro for in the college ID, so you can use that.
Thank you.
Okay, Roshan, we will be sharing all the resources in the mail, and it will also be shared in the Discord. So you can just refer to the Discord channel in the web development section.